Xenoblade Chronicles, released 2010, Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, released 2020, Xenoblade Chronicles X, released 2015, Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition, released 2025, Xenoblade Chronicles 2, released in 2017. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 Definitive Edition may not be all too far away. But does it really need to get the Definitive Edition treatment, or is a Switch 2 edition like Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom enough? Seeing ORS in a higher resolution and framerate would undoubtedly be incredible, but Monolith Soft is nothing if not ambitious, and so this feels like an easy way out, even if myself and many other fans of the series would be jumping for joy at these changes. As someone with over 1,000 hours in the game, I've had enough time to consider a lot of the strengths and flaws inside and out, and these alone won't be solved just by making a prettier game. So let's check out some of the other Switch 2 versions and see if they're more what we're after from our enhanced Xenoblade 2. Kirby in the Forgotten Land comes with new story content, the Star-Crossed World, which I can only assume is the Kirby equivalent to Torna. Needless to say, something that we already have in Xenoblade 2, and so not exactly necessary. Metroid Prime 4 is bringing in mouse control, which doesn't really add anything for Xenoblade. And finally, Mario Party Jamboree adds an extra mode which has mouse, camera, and microphone compatibility. As funny as it would be to shout "Sword Bash" and see him do it on the screen, or yell at Tora to topple and override his purposely inconsistent AI, this isn't quite what I think most of us were hoping for, although now I've said that, I kinda need it right now. So if we are going to get a Switch 2 edition of Xenoblade 2, it's likely it'd just be a version with better visuals and framerate. Like I said, most fans, including me, would be pretty satisfied with this. But if anyone is going to be more ambitious than this, it'll be Monolith Soft. Hence, Xenoblade 2 Definitive Edition. Hello everyone, I'm Shemcat, and Xenoblade 2 is my favourite game of all time. So here are the changes I think could make for a worthwhile Definitive Edition. Some things we can just cross off right away. Improved framerate, resolutions, loading times, and some of the weird performance issues like textures taking a few extra seconds to load, and the memory leak that could slow down loading times significantly if you played for too long, or the warp menu occasionally lagging for a few seconds when I open it. The other change that's most obvious is just giving the player access to the DLC. Let them have the items, challenge mode, DLC blades, accessibility features, and of course Torna, the Golden Country. However, they shouldn't be implemented as if someone just downloaded the DLC for their first playthrough. For example, rather than automatically insert the items into our player's inventory, or have them select the items from the menu, make them do a little quest or open a chest somewhere. Like War Chest contributions from Banner could be in the chairman's room where you meet him for the first time. Or the kits with the core crystals, overdrive protocols, and love sources could be somewhere in Torgoth, or Umon's shipyard, or Garfont village. Challenge mode I think is perfect as it is. Just give the user a little tutorial telling them that it has spawned in after chapter 3. Make it a reward for finishing the first Merc mission, or something. The two easiest DLC blades to access may pose a bit of a problem though. You can awaken Crossette and Corvin in chapter 2, with the DLC enabled, and they carry us all the way to the final boss in the speedrun, since they're very quick and easy to set up, as well as being superior to anything in the gacha. There are a couple of workarounds. Make them show up later, nerf their numbers so they're not nearly as dominant, or, and this is my least favourite option, put them into the gacha. I think the first option is best, as it will keep the fun of using these blades that the base game has, whilst not making them be the main character of every playthrough. Anywhere from chapter 5 onwards would be reasonable for them to start showing up, I think. And finally, Torna. Whilst it was originally pitched to take place between chapters 7 and 8, I feel making it a DLC created a much longer story that would probably break the pace of the base game too much, so they can just keep it as a separate mode. Maybe tell the user it's good to play Torna after chapter 7, and they can either do that, or continue pushing the main game. Outside of this, there's only one specific change I think would be necessary to make in Torna. I think community is good, just make the requirement to progress the story after Malos attacks Oresco community level 3 rather than level 4. The side quests are important to the story, it is just such a detour if you haven't done much. Oh, and for simple changes, add an autosave and multiple save files on each profile. This was outdated in 2017. Xenoblade 2 has my favourite combat in any game ever, but I definitely understand why many people say it's slow to start with. You do need to understand it and level up some of the right skills before it gets really, really good. The changes I'd make wouldn't impact combat too much for people trying to create optimal post-game builds, but would rather mostly help people who are just starting the game. Obviously, a revamped tutorial system will help players find out how everything works, and how to set up your party with things like weapon chips and pouch items. But pouch item setups could do with some more variety, because why would you not just use arts recharge items? And so my first change would be to add a very small amount of automatic arts recharge by default, so the players have to spend ever so slightly less just waiting to do anything. It should probably just be the lowest value of 0.1, but it would open up a little more pouch variety. Also, for that matter, changing the wording on these effects would be good to make them clearer, as this one I always found super unclear. Something I love about Xenoblade 2 combat is how everything has a really nice feeling of progression to it. Auto attacks, to arts, to specials, to blade combos, to chain attacks. But this being the only game in the series where you start combat without being able to immediately use arts, it hurts. If it were up to me to make the early game feel nicer, I'd replace the unlock X art at the start of battle skill with something else, and give them their top art from the start of the game. I'd also half fill up the side art, just to not kill the rhythm once that first art has been used. It doesn't take too long to learn the skill, so it is literally just for speeding up gameplay in the first few chapters. Speaking of speeding up gameplay, an easy change could just be increasing everyone's movement speeds, both in and out of combat by like 5 to 10%. And while we're at it, the battle dash from Xenoblade 3 would make moving around in combat feel great, whereas it feels utterly miserable in the base game. Just try to go around a large area collecting potions and you'll definitely realize how much of a boon this feature would be outside XC3. Some other things from Xenoblade 3 would also make combat nicer. Let us end chain attacks early, and give us some UI indicators, so we can see what side of the enemy we're facing, and how many enemies are in the field at once. Small changes, but will be very nice quality of life. In terms of overall game balance, a lot of blades are super overtuned and I think that's awesome. However, there are also some who are really bad. Most infamously, the shield hammers are tanks that cannot take aggro, and so for these blades, I don't think it'd be unfair to up their damage output, up their aggro generation, and also speed up their animations a little bit. Certain story blades like Gormott, Aegeon, Nia, or even Pyra could do with some number increases or having their skills slightly reworked so they can keep up with many of the stronger blades. In terms of the specifics, I could make that its own separate video, but some blades just deserved slightly better. The final change I'll suggest for combat may be the most impactful one of the video, and that is the Torna style blade combos where any element can combo into any other one. The purpose of this is, just like everything else, helping the player out in the early game. Before you've unlocked a good variety of blades, some combo routes are too tricky to make work consistently. For example, if you pull Xenoblade in the base game, your options aren't great at the start. You can build up to a tier 2 on her, and finish off with Poppy Alpha to get some mediocre damage, or pray you also pull an Ice Blade so you can use Frost Typhoon, which is then obviously dependent on the gacha. Just like in Torna, the traditional blade combo routes would also exist, with their flashy animations and bigger numbers. I don't think it should all be exactly like Torna though. The Orb Master that's base kit in the DLC would probably alter combat far too much. This would be similar to the quick recharge added in Xenoblade X Definitive Edition. You can still get crazy damage without it in the late game, with your strong setups, but at the beginning of the game where you don't have as many options, it could just speed things along. Those are the main things I think should be altered in combat, but there are still many changes that I think are necessary outside of it. The main one I think would alone justify an $80 remake, that being the removal of the landing lag you experience after jumping, or falling like 0.3 meters. If Xenoblade 3 is anything to go by though, we can hopefully expect this in a definitive edition because the jumps in that game are actually pretty good. I understand the purpose of the blade gacha, making everyone's playthrough slightly different, but the odds of getting rare blades could be made higher, just so it's less of a grind to get everyone, and so your collections aren't bloated by another trillion common blades that will never be used by anyone. Navigating Orist is something that can cause a lot of problems for new players, Just ask anyone how they found navigating Spirit Crucible Elpis, and is something that I think needs addressing, in some level, in a definitive edition. One way of doing this is by adding the funny orange line from Xenoblade 3 that points you towards the destination. In XE3, it's something in the iris showing the way, XEX at Tatsu's Follow, so you could call this Salvage Ascents or something. This compass at the top could also use some work to be less confusing. I'm sure there are a couple 100,000 games that execute this concept better than Xenoblade 2 does, but one I'd like to use as an example is Elden Ring. Looking around you can see north, south, east and west, and easily see when you're going in the correct direction of an important location. The map that appears after clicking the right stick could also benefit looking like Night Rains as well. It would just be a little nicer. People are always very quick to diss the menus of this game. I think they could do with some improvement as well. My idea would be to make it look sort of like a notebook or diary, like we see in the save icon. But so long as it's easier to navigate, something more straightforward like Xenoblade 1 Definitive Edition could also work well. Also, pretty please have them be more responsive and less laggy and not randomly crash the game sometimes. Especially on the warp menu, I still have no clue why it runs so badly in this game. There are a few other things in the UI that I think could be addressed, one being the battle portraits that are absent. On top of just looking nicer, it would likely also come with the benefit of showcasing which blades are currently in use, and maybe showcasing the affinity levels. Give them a gold glow at max affinity or something. Another thing that could be done is giving an indication to the player when one of their blade skills is active, sort of like Dead by Daylight perks lighting up, letting the player see when they are more frequently playing into their blade skills. Take Chrysat. When targeting a launched enemy, an icon for pyrotechnics is active. For every potion collected, gathering sparks will be showcased, maybe with a number to show the player how many have been collected, and one for Alchemy Adept will show up when connecting a fusion combo. There are probably some skills that will be really difficult to represent in this way, but for the most part would probably help. Either that or clutter up the combat UI even more. It wouldn't be a Xenoblade game without the story and characters, and so I'd like to consider this aspect for a definitive edition as well. The majority of the designs are great and I won't name names, but some bring down the quality and could be touched up to look a little less goofy and fit in more with the rest of the series. Personally, I think the eyes in Xenoblade 3 were phenomenal, and if Xenoblade 2 could pull something like that off, amazing. And the great thing about tweaking some character designs is that if you don't like them, the base game will still exist. Despite the criticisms to the English dub, I wouldn't really expect for there to be any major re-recordings of lines, but if that were to happen, I think it could be great to alter the beginning of Chapter 4 slightly. This is the section with Rock before they get sent to the Shadow Realm for the rest of the game. Maybe have it hint at Petroka and Mikhail a little so they're not just complete randoms at the end of the chapter. Honestly, on a similar note, more post-death references to Vandam, because it does almost feel like they forget about him. I always thought he'd be a great addition to the Ghost section in Chapter 10. Ghost Vandam telling Rex how he sacrificed himself for nothing would be perfectly soul-crushing. As you may have noticed, a lot of this has been a discussion of quality of life adjustments, without a major hook like Future Connected was for 1DE, or Chapter 13 was for XDE. It is possible this could just be omitted, since there'd already be so much in the game, and the quality of life would be more than enough for the majority of Xenoblade fans, but like I said earlier, Monolith Soft is nothing if not ambitious. If we do get a definitive edition that came with extra story content, I wouldn't expect something Torna length or even Future Connected length, but there are two routes we could go down. A silly story called like Tora the Golden Nopon that happens pretty soon after the events of the base game, or it could go down the lore route and go far into that, showing us the creation of Origin before the worlds of Xenoblade 1 and 2 combined to lead to the events of Xenoblade 3, and why those two weren't here when facing off against Alpha. And for my final suggested change, I think I speak for everyone when I say we need a 4-hour, unskippable Jin X Malice gay sex